Have you ever felt like a ghost in your own life? Present, but not quite seen, especially by the people who are supposed to see you most clearly? My name is Vivian Hayes, and for a long time I let my family's unwritten rules, their silent expectations, dictate the worth of my work, the value of my choices. I used to think if I just worked hard enough, quietly enough, on things that mattered to me, eventually they'd understand. But sometimes understanding only arrives when it's delivered by an outside voice, a voice they can't ignore. If you've ever poured your heart into something, only to have it dismissed as nice or a little hobby, then maybe this story will resonate with you. It wasn't a sudden break, the way I drifted from their definition of success. It was more like a slow current pulling me away from the shore they'd mapped out. I'm a project manager now at Urbanscape Solutions. It's a reputable architecture and urban planning firm. My main focus, the thing that gets me out of bed every morning, is a large-scale initiative we call the Community Revitalization Project. We take neglected neighborhoods, forgotten corners of the city, and try to breathe life back into them. It's not always glamorous. It's definitely not the high-stakes, high-return world they envisioned for me. There was a time a few years back when I was on that track, corporate finance, the kind of job that comes with a certain shine, a certain kind of respect in circles like my family's. The pay was good, impressive even. But inside, I felt hollow, like I was meticulously arranging numbers on a spreadsheet that ultimately meant very little to anyone's actual life. The air in those offices always felt recycled, the conversations transactional. I remember sitting in yet another meeting, the fluorescent lights humming, staring at a PowerPoint about maximizing shareholder value, and a single, clear thought cut through the noise. This isn't it. This can't be all there is. Walking away wasn't dramatic. There were no slammed doors, no tearful confrontations, just a quiet resignation, and then a polite, carefully worded conversation with my parents. My father, he just nodded slowly, his face unreadable. My mother, she wrung her hands a little and asked if I was sure. Their disappointment wasn't spoken, not in harsh words anyway. It was more an absence, a shift in the atmosphere whenever my career came up, a kind of gentle, almost pitying redirection of the conversation. Now, I live in a modest apartment, a little further from the city center than they'd probably prefer. It's filled with more blueprints and community feedback forms than expensive art. And this community revitalization project, it's demanding. We're trying to convert an old, abandoned textile mill in the Elmwood district into a mixed-use space. Part vocational training center, part local artisan market, part affordable co-working hub. Another part of the project involves redesigning 3 derelict parklands in underserved neighborhoods, turning them into safe, vibrant green spaces with community gardens and play areas for kids who currently have nowhere to go. It's about listening, really listening, to what people need, not just what an architect thinks looks good on paper. My younger brother, Ethan, he's the star, always has been. He aced everything, sailed into a prestigious law firm, and now he's making partner track, advising on multi-million-dollar mergers. He's smart, driven, and genuinely good at what he does. And my parents, they glow when they talk about him. His successes are clear, tangible, easily understood. They're the kind of successes you can announce at dinner parties without needing a lengthy explanation. And then there's me. Family dinners, they have a certain rhythm. So, Vivian, how's that community thing going? My mother might ask, her smile a little too bright. I'd try to explain a recent breakthrough, maybe securing a crucial grant or getting a difficult zoning variance approved. But then, almost inevitably, the conversation would pivot. Ethan just closed a huge deal, international, very complex. And I'd nod, stir my soup, and become a quiet observer again. Not quite invisible, but definitely out of focus. The odd one out, the one who took the scenic route that led in their eyes to a much less impressive destination. It's a subtle loneliness, the kind that settles in the quiet spaces and the unspoken comparisons. But even then, a part of me, a quiet, stubborn part, knew I was on the right path. My path. The Community Revitalization Initiative isn't just lines on a blueprint. It's about people. It's about navigating the intricate web of city council meetings, community board approvals, and endless stakeholder negotiations. I spend hours in drafty church basements and fluorescent-lit community centers, listening, really listening, to Mrs. Henderson, who's lived in the Elmwood district for 60 years and just wants a safe place for her grandkids to play. To Mr. Ramirez, who dreams of opening a small bakery in the old mill space if we can just make the rent affordable. These aren't abstract concepts, they're lives, hopes deeply rooted in the soil we're trying to nurture. There are small victories, of course, moments that make all the bureaucratic wrangling worthwhile. Like the day we finally got the green light to plant the first trees in what used to be a concrete wasteland, and a little girl, no older than 5, ran up and hugged my leg, just spontaneously. Or the afternoon we unveiled the refurbished reading room in the old Oak Haven Library branch, and I saw tears in the eyes of the elderly gentleman who said he hadn't had a quiet, well-lit place to read since his wife passed. Those moments. They don't make the headlines in the financial pages. They don't translate into hefty bonuses. But they're real. They're the fuel. At Urbanscape Solutions, the higher-ups, well, they publicly support the initiative. It looks good on the company's CSR profile. Giving back to the community, they call it. And I know some of them genuinely believe in it, but it's not where the big money is, the skyscraper projects, the luxury condo developments. Those are the engines driving the firm's profits. My projects are often seen as worthy, yes, but perhaps a little idealistic, a little less strategically vital. A different kind of pressure, not just from family, but from the very environment I work in. I remember once a small local paper did a piece on the Elmwood Mill conversion. Just a column, really, but it was positive, highlighted the community engagement. I was proud. I brought it up at Sunday dinner. Timidly, maybe. "Oh, that's nice, dear," my mother said, her attention already drifting. And then Dad chimed in. Ethan was just quoted in the Wall Street Journal, about that tech merger, front page of the business section. And just like that, my little piece of news, my small, tangible success, shriveled. It wasn't a deliberate cruelty. I don't think it ever was. It was just a fundamental disconnect, a different set of metrics for what constituted achievement. Then Chloe Gardner came into the picture. Ethan's fiancée. She was a breath of fresh air. Intelligent, genuinely warm, with a sharp wit and an easy laugh. She worked for a well-respected foundation that funded social impact projects, sometimes partnering with journalists on investigative pieces about community development. From our first few interactions, I felt a flicker of something kindred. She asked questions, real questions. She listened. But I was still cautious. Years of feeling slightly on the periphery had taught me to keep a certain distance. Still, there was a glimmer there, a possibility of being seen, truly seen, by someone connected to that inner family circle. It was a faint echo in what often felt like empty boardrooms, both at work and at home. Life has a funny way of weaving threads together, doesn't it? Chloe, with her work at the foundation, naturally had her finger on the pulse of community initiatives across the city. And one day, she started talking about a project that had really captured her attention. She was researching it for a potential feature, or maybe considering it for a grant. She spoke with such passion about its innovative approach, its deep community engagement, its potential to be a model for urban renewal. She described the transformation of an old industrial site, the creation of green spaces in concrete jungles, the focus on empowering local residents. She mentioned it during a casual family get-together. "There's this incredible initiative," she said, her eyes shining, run through Urbanscape Solutions of all places. They're doing truly groundbreaking work in some of the city's most overlooked neighborhoods. The project manager, whoever they are, must be phenomenal. My heart did a little flutter kick. Urbanscape Solutions. That was my firm. That was my project. My mother just nodded vaguely, probably already thinking about the dessert course. Ethan gave a non-committal. Interesting. No one made the connection. Why would they? In their minds, my community thing was small, local, something I dabbled in. I just sat there, a small, secret warmth spreading through me. It was a strange feeling, validation from an unexpected source, an outsider who saw the value without any of an insider's preconceived notions. But it was tinged with that familiar sadness, too. The chasm between how my work was perceived by a knowledgeable professional like Chloe and how it was barely registered by my own family felt wider than ever. Then came the preparations for Ethan and Chloe's engagement party, and with them, the subtle and not so subtle guidance from my mother. Emails started arriving. Vivian dear, about the party. Perhaps something a bit more festive, not one of your usual practical outfits. Another one, a few days later, and maybe we don't need to go into too much detail about your projects. Chloe's family are very distinguished, you know. We want everything to be perfect. Perfect. That word hung in the air. My role, it seemed, was to be a perfectly blended, perfectly unremarkable part of the background. Don't stand out. Don't say anything that might lead to awkward questions or, heaven forbid, suggest that not everyone in the Hayes family was climbing the traditional ladder of success. The irony wasn't lost on me. Chloe, the very person whose family my mother was so keen to impress, was unknowingly championing my work. While I was being coached to downplay it, it was a lot to hold. The week before the party, the pressure felt heavier. My mother's texts became more frequent. Found a lovely dress online, Vivian, a soft pastel, very appropriate. And then, just a reminder, dear, keep the conversation light. Ethan and Chloe are the stars of the show, of course. I understood, I really did. She wanted everything to be seamless, for Ethan, for Chloe, for the family's image, but each message felt like a tiny paper cut, a small erosion of my own space. Then, something unexpected happened. I was at a little neighborhood cafe near one of our project sites in a newly revitalized area, meeting with a local community leader to discuss a new public art installation. As we were wrapping up, a woman from a nearby table hesitated, then approached me. "Excuse me," she said, a warm smile on her face. "From the Elmwood Mill project?" I blinked, surprised. Yes, I am." Her smile widened. "Oh, I just wanted to say thank you. My son just got a spot in one of the new apprenticeship programs there. It's changed everything for him, for our family." Her eyes were a little misty. "What you're doing, it's incredible." It was a small moment. No cameras, no applause, just a genuine, heartfelt acknowledgement from someone whose life had been touched by the work. It was like a cool drink of water on a very dry day. It solidified something in me. I wasn't going to the party for my family, not really. I wasn't going to shrink myself to fit their expectations. I was going for Chloe, who in her own way already saw the value, and I was going for myself because that woman in the cafe and countless others like her were the reason I did what I did. My work wasn't a little thing. It had weight, it had meaning. So I found a dress, not pastel, not overtly practical, a deep emerald green, simple, elegant lines. It felt like me. I wasn't making a statement, not deliberately. I just wanted to feel like myself, walking into that room. The weight of their unspoken expectations was still there, but now it was counterbalanced by a different kind of weight. The weight of purpose. The engagement party was at a swanky venue downtown, one of those places with polished concrete floors, dramatic uplighting, and views of the riverfront. It felt a million miles away from the dusty community centers and muddy construction sites I frequented. I arrived, as always, a little early. Nerves, I guess. My mother spotted me almost immediately, her perfectly applied smile faltering for just a fraction of a second. "Oh, Vivian, you came." As if there had been any doubt, her eyes flicked to my emerald dress, lingered a moment too long. Cataloging, I imagined. I found my assigned seat, tucked away at the end of a long table, comfortably out of the direct line of sight of the head table. Just how they preferred me, I mused. Present, but not prominent. The evening unfolded predictably. Champagne flowed, toasts were made. Ethan's boss said something suitably corporate and congratulatory. Chloe's father spoke eloquently about family and new beginnings. I sipped my water, nodded at the appropriate times, and perfected the art of being pleasant wallpaper. Then came dessert, and with it, the moment that, in retrospect, felt almost preordained. There was a lull in the conversation at our end of the table. Chloe, seated a few chairs down, leaned forward slightly, a polite, curious expression on her face. Her voice, though not loud, carried in the sudden quiet. "Vivian," she said, "I've been meaning to ask, what exactly is it that you do at Urbanscape Solutions?" "You're a project manager," Ethan mentioned. It was like a record scratch. The ambient chatter around us just ceased. I saw my mother, out of the corner of my eye, visibly stiffen. Her wine glass paused halfway to her lips. My father suddenly seemed intensely interested in the pattern on his dessert plate. I took a slow sip of water, buying myself a precious second. My voice, when I finally spoke, was calm, even. Yes, I am. I manage the firm's Community Revitalization Initiative. Chloe blinked. The Community Revitalization Initiative? You mean the one focused on areas like Elmwood and Oak Haven? The one that's transforming those old industrial sites and parks? That's the one, I confirmed. Her eyes widened. Her fork, laden with a piece of rich chocolate torte, clattered softly against her plate. No, you're kidding me. You manage that. I gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. Her hand flew to her mouth. She looked at Ethan, a shocked, almost bewildered expression on her face, then back at me. You're? Vivian. You're the Vivian Hayes? The project manager for that entire initiative? The one who's been getting all those incredible results? The room, or at least our section of it, hadn't just quieted. It felt like it had stopped breathing. Chloe pushed her chair back slightly, her eyes shining. My foundation, we've been following that project for months. We're considering it for a major impact award. The scope, the community integration, the sheer audacity of what you're achieving, it's extraordinary. I've read reports, seen the preliminary impact studies. The lives you're changing? She shook her head, still looking at me with a kind of dazed awe. I even featured some of the early successes in a piece I was working on about urban renewal best practices. She turned to the rest of the table, her voice ringing with a sudden, fierce conviction. I don't think any of you understand. This woman, Vivian, she gestured towards me, she is leading one of the most significant urban regeneration programs in this city, from the ground up. She's working with community leaders, securing funding, navigating insane bureaucracy. She's literally rebuilding neighborhoods. Aunt Carol, the one who always asked if I was still doing that little community thing, let out a small audible gasp. Uncle David cleared his throat, loudly. My mother looked like she'd seen a ghost. Her mouth opened, then closed again. Ethan leaned towards me, his voice low, almost a whisper, a look of dawning comprehension on his face. Viv, I had no idea it was this. You never asked, I said, not unkindly, just a statement of fact. My voice was quiet, but in the profound stillness that had fallen, it carried. Clear and true. Silence. But this time, it wasn't the cold, dismissive silence I was so used to. This was different. This was the silence of recalculation, of dawning awareness. This was something very much like awe. The rest of that evening felt surreal, like walking through a dream where the lighting had suddenly shifted, revealing details I'd never noticed before. The whispers started up again, but they weren't the dismissive kind I was used to, the ones that happened when my back was turned. These were different. Curious. Impressed. Suddenly, people were asking me questions, real questions, about the challenges, the successes, the vision behind the Community Revitalization Initiative. Even Ethan's boss, the one with the expensive watch, sought me out to express his admiration for the significant social impact of my team's work. He probably still thought of it in terms of good PR for Urbanscape, but there was a new note of respect in his voice. My mother, she was a study in controlled shock. She sat straighter, spoke less, her usual social composure replaced by a kind of stunned quiet. It was as if her internal operating system was undergoing a massive, unexpected reboot. My father, for his part, actually made eye contact with me for more than a fleeting second, a flicker of something unreadable in his gaze. Aunt Carol, bless her, looked like she might faint. And me? For the first time in what felt like a lifetime, I didn't feel like an afterthought. I didn't feel like the family footnote. I hadn't planned it. I hadn't orchestrated some grand reveal. I hadn't even raised my voice. The truth had simply walked into the room, taken a seat at the table, and refused to be ignored any longer. It wasn't triumph I felt, not in a boastful way. It was more a quiet settling, a sense of rightness. The next morning, I woke up with a peculiar sense of calm in my chest. It wasn't the giddy feeling of victory or the sharp satisfaction of revenge. It was softer than that, deeper, like the almost inaudible click of a heavy door finally, gently latching shut. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from Ethan. Viv, I'm so sorry. I never asked. I should have. I'm really proud of you. Simple. No excuses. I looked at the message for a long moment, then turned the phone face down. Later that afternoon, my mom called. Twice. I let it go to voicemail. Not out of anger, not really. I didn't know what she would say. and for once I didn't want to give her the chance to diminish it, to somehow make it smaller than it felt. Not this time. I needed to hold on to that feeling of quiet validation, undiluted. A few days later, an envelope arrived. Actual honest-to-goodness paper, handwritten, from my mother. My heart did a little squeeze. I opened it carefully. "Dear Vivian," it began. "Chloe showed me some articles, some pictures about your revitalization project. She explained what it really entails. I watched a short video she had about the Elmwood community, and I cried. Not because I was surprised by what you've built, though perhaps I should have been. I cried because I realized I never truly bothered to look. I never asked the right questions. I was so focused on the path you seemed to walk away from that I never once stopped to see the incredible one you were forging for yourself and for so many others. You did something no one else in this family ever had the courage to do, Vivian. You dared to deviate from the plan. And in doing that, you've shown so many people what true impact looks like. Perhaps you're even teaching me. Love, Mom." I read it 3 times, slowly. Then I folded the single sheet of paper and placed it on my desk. Not in a frame, not for display, just there. Kept. Because this time, the validation didn't need to be hung on a wall. I was living it. A few months passed. Life settled into a new kind of normal. The Community Revitalization Initiative gained even more traction. We secured a major federal grant, which meant we could expand the scope of the Oak Haven Park project and start planning for a new community health clinic in a long-neglected downtown area. Chloe, true to her word, helped connect us with other foundations, and her article on innovative urban renewal prominently featuring our work got national attention. It was gratifying. My relationship with my family, it shifted. Subtly, but significantly. The Sunday dinners were different. They asked questions now, genuine questions. My father, who once only grunted when I talked about work, started asking about zoning laws and community engagement strategies. My mother began to refer to my work with a newfound respect, sometimes even a touch of, pride. At Ethan and Chloe's wedding, I overheard her telling one of Chloe's relatives, "This is my daughter, Vivian. She's a senior project manager, you know. She's transforming entire sections of the city. It's quite remarkable, really." I was still Vivian, still quiet, still focused on the work itself. The external validation was nice. It warmed a part of me that had been a little cold for a long time. But I realized with a clarity that was both freeing and profound that my sense of worth wasn't tied to it anymore. It had taken root in the work itself, in the tangible changes I saw, in the lives that were being touched. Last month, Ethan, Chloe, Mom, and Dad actually came with me to the official opening of the revitalized Elmwood Mill. It was a beautiful autumn day. The old brick building gleamed. The new community gardens were bursting with late-season flowers, and the vocational training center was already buzzing with activity. As we walked through the new marketplace, filled with local artisans selling their wares, my mother quietly took my arm. It's wonderful, Vivian," she said, her voice a little thick. I had no idea. My father just nodded, looking around with an expression I'd never seen on his face before, a kind of quiet awe. Ethan put his arm around my shoulder. "You did this, Viv. This is incredible." And standing there, surrounded by the hum of a community coming back to life, a community I'd had a small part in helping to rebuild, I knew I was exactly where I was supposed to be. I wasn't lost. I was just on a different blueprint, one I was drawing myself. And it was, finally, a blueprint that even my family could begin to read. The silence between us wasn't empty anymore. It was filled with a new understanding, a quiet respect. And that, I realized, was more than enough. It's funny, isn't it? How long we can live under the shadow of other people's expectations, trying to fit into a mold that was never meant for us. My journey wasn't about grand gestures or dramatic confrontations. It was about the quiet, persistent work of building something meaningful, brick by brick, conversation by conversation, until its reality became undeniable, until the light it cast was too bright to ignore. And the most surprising thing, the approval I'd craved for so long, when it finally came, felt secondary. The real affirmation had come from within, from the work itself, from the quiet knowledge that I was making a difference on my own terms. If this story, my story, stirred something in you, if you've ever felt unseen or had your passions dismissed, I'd genuinely love to hear your thoughts. Please drop a comment below and share your own experiences. You truly never know who might read your words and find a piece of their own strength in them. If this resonated with you, if you believe in the power of quiet victories, personal growth, and stories that dig a little deeper, I'd be honored if you'd subscribe to the channel. There are so many more journeys to share, and I'd love for you to be a part of this community. And if you feel moved to support the channel through super thanks, well, thank you, from the bottom of my heart. Sometimes giving, in whatever form it takes, is a powerful part of our own healing too. Until next time, stay grounded, be kind to yourselves and others, and please remember, your story is still unfolding, and it's yours to write.